Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Callum and I have a new episode for the Houston Zoo recreation. After the river's edge of the Pantanal, the central area features two iconic animals of South America, the Jaguar or Jaguar for my American audience and the macaw. The aviary for the macaw is especially important as it is the blue-throated macaw, one of the most endangered birds in South America. Houston is one of the few zoos who have successfully reproduced this macaw for many years. On the other hand, jaguars, not as endangered, are the main attraction of this area. An impressive natural habitat with an overhead walkway is an exciting place to spot these big cats. Remember to like, comment and subscribe for more videos. This episode we have two immersive habitats with climbing or flying animals. This means my absolute favourite thing to do. Yes, it's mesh time yet again. The blue-throated macaw aviary is rather large for a macaw. I'm used to seeing these birds in small macaw-on-a-stick style aviaries. However, Houston's aviary is large enough for these birds to fly around with ease. The method for mesh here has been simplified using the angle snap tool. I know if I keep to simple angles, both the metal rods and mesh panels will simply fall together, making the aviary much easier than previous builds, such as the Birds of the World aviaries. For the corners of the aviary, each angle is exactly the same because it means I only have to build one of the corner mesh segments, which can then be duplicated. The frame is rather simple, generally speaking. It's a one-sided aviary with a central portion and two angled corners which will be positioned over natural mud walls. Using the metal rods allows for a thick enough material to hide any mesh overlapping, while also looking very similar to the thin cables used on the real aviary. For the actual mesh layout, alignment with the metal rods makes quick work of the central portion. The largest mesh pieces are used to minimise the piece count of the overall aviary. For the corners it's a little more difficult. My usual method involves making a large flat mesh group and aligning that perfectly on both sides with the metal rods. It is fiddly to work with but beats trying to manually adjust mesh on one side, hopefully preventing any building anger. When aligned, the group is deleted minus the lowest mesh panel. I then gradually build up the corner segment with smaller mesh pieces to fill in all the gaps. Overlapping here is inevitable, especially near the top where the smallest mesh pieces are too big. Once that's complete, the corner segment is simply duplicated into all the other corner gaps to complete the aviary frame. Inside the aviary there will be 4 blue-throated macaws. This species of macaw is endemic to northern Bolivia, found only in the palm forest of the Llanos de Moxos, or the Beni Savanna. Not actually part of the Pantanal ecosystem, this is also one of the largest grassland floodplains in South America. This species is considered one of the most endangered macaw species and is listed by the IUCN as critically endangered. This species has been severely affected by legal and illegal bird trade, poaching and deforestation. Steep declines were recorded through the 1970s and 80s where it was thought extinct. In 1992, a wild population was discovered and the bird has been listed as critically endangered ever since. Despite its low numbers, the population of blue-throated macaws can be considered somewhat stable thanks to extensive conservation efforts. This included the creation of private reserves to protect the species, planting trees for food and nests, protecting existing forests, and installing nest boxes for breeding. Macaws are known as nut and seed lovers, however the blue-throated macaw actually prefers fruit. It lives off the palm fruit in the forest where it nests, specifically groves of the Motaku palm. So the natural mud walls have been built around the aviary, providing an immersive barrier like the giant otter habitat. This side of the Pantanal is located on the backstage side of the zoo, so I can't have terrain or a forest hiding the back of the mud walls. Instead, a retaining wall or planter is built using plaster walls and mock panels. This adds a really nice touch of realism, especially when I expand the backstage up to the Pantanal. The planter will also help the background of the aviary with similar Pantanal tropical plants, keeping the focus on macaws rather than any buildings that may appear behind. For the guest viewing area of the aviary, a wooden trellis frame is built. This doesn't really provide any sun or rain protection for the guests, but is an attractive feature found throughout the Pantanal. The trellis is simply made out of painted wooden round brace, arranged in a supporting layout. Starting from the bottom up, each layer is built where we first see the supports are joined with horizontal wood. Then from the opposite direction, long wood is built along the length of the trellis, providing the overall shape. The tedious part of the roof is each wooden brace needs to be placed at different positions so it doesn't look repetitive. Of course, this usually means duplicating the entire set of wood, then manually adjusting it so it looks just right. Moving on to the aviary interior now, with the help of Leif's natural blueprints for birds, I add multiple of these throughout the aviary, so the macaws have plenty of choice to choose from and gives guests the chance to see macaws at different parts of the aviary. This also includes mountain perches raised above the mud walls, as these parts of the aviary are accessible when I add climbing poles to help the macaws recognise the space above. These are modded birds, of course, that recently got updated, including flying animations. The macaws can interact with each of these enrichment blueprints. Also, they have their running animations replaced with flying, so you might see a macaw fly right across the aviary. To encourage the macaws to access most of the aviary, lots of different climbable branches are placed around the aviary, mostly connecting to the enrichment structures, which have bamboo poles all ready to help them climb. Realistically speaking, most of these will not be used, as the macaws will just want to interact with the enrichment, rather than exploring all the odd ends of the aviary. Some parts where the branches are placed are far too close to the mesh as well, which is little to no traversable space. Foliage for the aviaries is always difficult, especially for tropical themed aviaries. I want the macaws easily viewable from the guest path, but I also want the aviary to be as natural and immersive as possible, like the real exhibit. Starting off, the ground is painted with soil and then covered with buffalo grass. Manually placing buffalo grass always helps performance, even if it is tedious. Duplicating is a fine way to kill performance. Next is making the mud walls even more natural looking by adding the Kahakaha Oceana plants, simply pretending to be lush grass with these dry roots decorating the mud wall. A wide range of tropical South America plants are gradually built up across the aviary. Flowers, elephant ear plants, ferns help make the ground very lush. Using different sizes of the same plant is important for creating a lush habitat, while vertical foliage such as the ponytail palms break up the endless mud wall barrier. With the aviary complete, let's move on to the jaguar habitat. Like the yellow rustic buildings found in the river's edge area of the Pantanal, this area also features brightly coloured buildings. The view and shelter for the jaguars is a bright red building, similar to various grassland camps or lodges in the Brazilian Pantanal. An example of this is the Pantanal Jaguar Camp in Port Joffre in Brazil. The view and shelter is a fully covered shelter building with an angled roof, complete with these brightly coloured walls and an abundance of glass windows. These glass windows will provide fantastic views into the jaguar habitat. Rather than using the glass barrier, I use large glass thin wall panels, which look much nicer with its modern design, especially for a long glass viewing area. With the shelter roof frame complete for a 1 metre angle roof, I place an asphalt roof to match the grey looking roof I can find on Google Maps. While not my ideal choice for a roof material, it does allow me space below to create a realistic wooden interior roof, which guests will actually see from the path. In addition to the red walls, dark brown wooden slats complete the aesthetic of the viewing shelter. These will be used for the roof slats, stained wood panels under the asphalt roof, and also the roof supports in the middle of the shower. In order to minimize the obstruction of glass panels, the roof supports are placed in line with the glass panel edges. You don't really want to randomly place the supports while also having the glass edges hurting the viewing quality. Completely my fault for not recording the overall construction of the overhead walkway. This is easily the most unique feature of this Jaguar habitat. Right over the guest path, a large overhead walkway covered with natural looking logs allows the Jaguars to travel from the main shelter building to the habitat. Australia pack logs are used for this as the main walkway material, along with natural log blueprints also made out of Australia logs and full branches. The walkway also features a large habitat log frame to allow the Jaguars to recognise the accessible space. Really the only true way for overhead walkways or tunnels to work. Natural mudwall barriers continue through the Pantanal, covering up all the gaps under the overhead walkway and connecting towards the Jaguar habitat. The Jaguar, South America's only big cat, is the third largest in the world, after the lion and the tiger. It is adapted for life in the tropical rainforest with muscular limbs and large paws to climb trees and even swim in rivers. Unlike other cats, Jaguars actually like getting wet. They enjoy swimming and they are strong swimmers at that. They typically live near river habitats and have a taste for underwater life, such as fish and caiman. When not enjoying a dip, they embrace their nocturnal behaviour. Like other cats, Jaguars have eyes adapted for night hunting. Adaptations nearly double the cat's ability to see at night. Jaguars will hunt pretty much any animal encounters, which they are quite successful as they are patient hunters. They stalk and ambush along the river's edge, or wait in trees, or even sit quietly by the water's edge, tapping their tail in the water to attract fish. Fish might be tasty, but Jaguars have bigger prey in mind. Jaguars prey in more than 85 species in total, including peccaries, deer, tapir, domestic cattle, and capybara. Domestic cattle is a problem. If habitat loss a growing concern, they are turned into ranches with an abundance of cattle. Human conflict with the Jaguar at this stage is inevitable, where ranchers often respond by trapping and killing the big cats in retaliation. Conservation groups try to work with ranchers to reduce human-Jaguar conflict. Workshops help ranchers understand better husbandry practices and introduce a number of programs to compensate ranchers when they lose cattle to Jaguars, so they are less motivated to hunt them. The Jaguar habitat also continues the wetland theme of the Pantanal. Shocking, isn't it? A Pantanal-themed area with wetland habitats. A pool and stream can be found cutting the habitat in half, where climbable logs will allow access to the other side. The far side of the habitat will be hilly, as the giant otter next door presents quite the climb. Working on this thin strip of terrain is a little difficult to get it right, especially a natural sloping hill that doesn't take up too much space of the pool below. The left side of the habitat is generally flatter, as the Pantanal is slowly transitioning to the grassland on this side, which we will see in the next episode. In contrast to the blue water of the otter habitat, this water is more green, like a tropical wetland colour. Next up is the wooden boardwalk, which I'm assuming is to help the Jaguars cross the front of the habitat. Australian planks are rarely used, but are surprisingly great for climbable animals, even when separated as individual planks. The planks are angled into the terrain on both sides to help the Jaguars recognise the climbable material. Supporting boardwalk pieces are then added to complete the boardwalk, as it is supposed to be above the water. Thanks to the lovely terrain and paths, I have a sloped water's edge under mine. The mud walls are now added to the habitat, completely changing the landscape with the sloped terrain. A lot of angling is required due to different elevations of the habitat for the walls to look natural. This is the first step of creating the lush Jaguar environment needed for the Pantanal. Placing the mud walls is simple enough, but you do need to know where to place them. Obvious breaks and steep slopes of the terrain ideally need to be covered by mud walls, ensuring the elevation of the wall isn't too low or too high. The different variety of mud walls is also extremely important to remove any repetition, so it can look very natural. The tops of the mud walls don't really matter, as they'll be getting covered in foliage to hide any ugly parts. Once the walls are placed, the terrain should also be adjusted to fit into the mud walls placement. This can be a simple smoothing action or a more drastic lowering or raising the terrain. Having a terrain jump behind the mud wall will severely hurt the overall result. A custom addition to the Jaguar habitat is the addition of a waterfall, which I thought would look nice to break up all these mud walls. One of the aquatic pack waterfalls is added among the mud walls, then several water effects are used to enhance the look. Most importantly is the waterfall bottom effect, adding splashing effects to the water surface due to the alignment of the waterfall piece. Faux rocks are then placed around the waterfall to blend the mud walls and waterfall together and improve the overall sides of the waterfall with some nice rock surfaces. Testing with a variety of different climbable log materials, this tree needs to be accessible, so I have to use these logs. The logs are extended from the top of the slope down to the water surface, then towards the wooden boardwalk, effectively connecting the boardwalk to the upper slope if the Jaguars ever feel like moving that direction. The good side of these habitat logs is the choice of different lengths. Shorter lengths allow for more realistic looking tree frames, which larger wooden logs can't achieve with 4 or so metre pieces. Ensuring the logs are accessible over the mud walls is also a challenge, as the twilight pieces do interact with the logs. This is why they are raised slightly above the mud wall instead of sitting on top of them. Making a lush Jaguar habitat isn't exactly simple, as it requires lots of plant layers to bring out the tropical South American atmosphere. First thing is to cover the terrain with buffalo grass like any other tropical or grassland habitat. It's important to manually lower each of the buffalo grass into the ground to not overwhelm the terrain with thick grass. For trees, an uncommon use by me is the tamarind tree, which works great with the tamarind scratching tree enrichment I've already placed in habitat. It works well for merging the tropical and grassland themes together, along with some of the acai palm trees. Although not really a Pantanal plant, it has seen lots of use around the Houston Zoo already. The large area this palm covers helps break up the background and add some fantastic vertical lush foliage. Smaller trees in the form of the Brazil nut sapling are added at the back of the habitat, hiding any gaps in the mud walls. Creosote bushes, particularly the larger bush, are added pretty much all across the habitat to introduce the first dense foliage to the ground. Kentia palms complement the creosote bushes, along with a wealth of tropical flowers on the left side of the habitat. Different varieties of orchids work great here by building up a diverse ground cover that feels distinctly South American. Two of my favourite smaller tropical plants are the Swiss cheese plant and the bird's eye fern. I use the smallest Swiss cheese plant and the medium bird's eye fern around the habitat to begin my second stage of foliage. Ponytail palms, one of the best tropical plants thanks to its lush leaves, can be sunken in the ground and added in key locations to break up sightlines. They also complement the mud walls well when placed as a stand-in palm tree. For the background, thick layers of custard trees and creosote bushes fill in any remaining gaps like any other habitat. The custard trees, the smallest one, can also be added inside the habitat for some sparse placement. The third stage is the addition of the bramble bush. I've never used this in a tropical build, but surprisingly it works really well when paired with either the custard tree or the creosote bush. This helps build up the water's edge in any other areas still not feeling lush enough. The long bramble bush especially, and the first bushy ones, help build up that final third stage of foliage work. Lastly, blue stem grass. If buffalo grass wasn't enough, well, that's where the blue stem comes in handy. The blue stem grass can be placed amongst the bramble and creosote bushes already placed around the habitat. The grass here helps create an overgrown lush environment with tall grass strands growing among the bushes. Let's start the tour then. We have two habitats in the central area of the Pantanal, the Blue-throated Macaw aviary and the Jaguar habitat. First we reach the Macaw aviary. A viewing area under this wooden trellis frame provides a wide view into the aviary where only mesh dampens the view. The large immersive aviary contains 4 macaws, who can be found either travelling amongst the natural ground cover or actually flying amongst these enrichment log frames. Thanks to the update, these macaws can be appreciated to their full extent as the modder Great Cake brings us these fantastic flying birds, unlike a certain company. Blue-throated macaws are often called barba azul in Spanish, meaning blue beard. This helps separate them from the very similar looking blue and gold macaw, which is one of the most common macaws and can be found across tropical South America. Macaws, of course, are very large parrots of Central and South America. They are intelligent and curious birds that like to explore and keep busy. They are very aware of their surroundings, which is necessary in the wild to keep watch for predators. To the right of the aviary we have some signage educating guests about how endangered the blue-throated macaw is and conservation efforts being done to help this bird, especially knowing the nesting boxes which help breeding success of this bird species. We move on to the Jaguar habitat, which is the rest of the central area. The red building is the main viewing shelter for the Jaguars habitat. On the wall, a sign about jaguars being ambushed predators and how strong their bite is can be seen. A large viewing area with large glass windows offers a fantastic view into the habitat. The lush habitat is home to a pair of jaguars who explore the lush tropical habitat, which does mean they can be rather hard to spot at times. Thankfully, the melanastic jaguar, which can be seen wandering past just after leaving the small shelter beside the viewing shelter. The jaguars do love to swim in this part of the habitat, however they also love to disappear from view when they enter it. That brings us to travel to the next viewing area of the jaguar habitat. Beside the small shelter, the jaguar education sign can also be found. Right next to the viewing shelter is the overhead walkway. Jaguars travelling to or from the main shelter building can be seen above the path as guests walk right under them. A mesh roof and walls keep both the jaguars and guests safe, of course. Continuing onwards to another trellis frame is the second viewing area for the jaguars. This viewing area is surrounded by mesh as we don't want the jaguars getting that close to guests. Luckily, both jaguars are right across the water. Encouraging the jaguars here are several enrichment items such as a scratching tree post and one of the fire hose balls. Seeing jaguars in a lush tropical habitat is a great treat to those exploring Houston's Pantanal. That's this tour complete with only one episode left to complete the Pantanal. Thanks for watching everyone and see you next time.